in applied research and innovation. In fact, Madam Speaker, this clause deals with centralization without the proper safeguards. The bill establishes the Institute as the national centralized body on applied research. True it is that centralization can reduce duplication. Nevertheless, that specific clause gives the Institute sweeping powers to conduct research, commission studies, and shape policies without clear limits. And this raises some serious questions. For example, where is the protection for university-led research? What is the guarantee that independent, curiosity-driven science will not be sidelined? And allow me, Madam Speaker, at this stage to give you an example. Let us imagine that the University of Mauritius has spent 10 years building expertise, for example, in coral reef restoration. And they have published peer-reviewed studies. They have trained local students. Now, let's say, for example, that this bill, the ministry needs a quick report on coastal resilience. Instead of partnering with the university, the ministry goes directly to the new institute. And the institute, under pressure to deliver fast result, commissions a short-term study using external consultants. The university's long-term work is sidelined, the expertise is ignored, therefore their students lose opportunities, Madam Speaker. This is not hypothetical. Centralization concentrates commissioning power. It creates a single gatekeeper for research funding, Madam Speaker. In a small country like ours, and we should take note of that, that gatekeeper can easily become a bottleneck or a tool for preference, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, under the Mauritius Research and Innovation Council Act, the MRIC model funded diverse actors. This new model under this present legislation runs the risk of creating a monopoly on research priorities, and as well as we all know, monopolies stifle innovation, and we have seen this lesson globally, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Clause 3 also gives the Institute power to establish and operate, two words, establish and operate research facilities, laboratories, innovation hubs. Again, this sounds very positive, Madam Speaker. But let me give you two examples. What happens to existing facilities like the Mauritius Oceanography Institute or the Food and Agricultural Research and Extension Institute? Will they be duplicated, Madam Speaker? Will they be defunded in favor of the new institute-run labs? And this bill is silent about that. Madam Speaker, silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty wastes resources, Madam Speaker. Let me come now to Clause 4, which deals with the role and responsibilities of the Institute. Mission-oriented research is useful, but it can be dangerous if misused. Clause 4 mandates mission-oriented research on climate resilience, food security, digital transformation, and social inequality. Although we do agree that these are urgent challenges, we also note, Madam Speaker, that the clause also empowers the Institute to define what counts as national challenge. The question, Madam Speaker, today is who decides? The board? Yes. But who appoints the board? The answer is the minister. And to explain what I just said, let me share two concrete examples. And the first one refers to food security. The Institute, Madam Speaker, could commission a study favoring high-tech, for example, imported seed varieties, because they promise quick yield gains. But in this case, what about research on traditional, climate-resilient crops favored by small planters? What about agroecological methods that protect soil and biodiversity? If the Institute leadership prioritizes quick wins or, Madam Speaker, aligns with commercial interests, alternative approaches get marginalized. The bill says research must be evidence-based. But, like I said earlier, the question today is who decides what counts as evidence. The answer is that if the definition is controlled by a politically appointed board, science becomes selective, Madam Speaker. Let me share another example with regard to Clause 4, which explicitly mentions, for example, gentrification as a national challenge. Good, Madam Speaker. But let us imagine that the Institute commissions a study on housing, for example, policy in Port Louis. The research finds that current policies displace low-income families. Let us say the findings are inconvenient. Under Clause 32, which I shall address at a later stage, the minister could direct the Institute to refocus the study or, Madam Speaker, delay the publication or commission a counter-study. What would be the end result then, Madam Speaker? Public policy will not be shaped by independent evidence, but by political comfort, Madam Speaker. And allow me here to refer to Clause 15(3), which is very clear, Madam Speaker. The minister appoints the chairperson and 7 members. No independent nomination panel, and the appointment will require just proven competence in the various fields which I stated earlier under Clause 15(3)(a). But what is proven competence? How do we define proven competence, Madam Speaker? And based on the nomination made by this government since the beginning of their mandate in November 2024, I'm worried, Madam Speaker, that when it comes to their definition of competence, we know what has happened on the several institutions of our country. And in this specific clause, Madam Speaker, there is clearly no statutory quota for academic or civil society representation. Madam Speaker, what I fear is that this board will be under the control of the minister. Why I'm saying that, Madam Speaker, for example, the minister could appoint board members with strong ties to a particular corporate sector. Say, for example, real estate development. That board then will oversee research on gentrification, land use, or housing policy. Is it therefore, Madam Speaker, I put the question, realistic to expect them to prioritize studies that challenge their associates' interests? The bill, Madam Speaker, relies on goodwill. Good governance requires, and I say, structural safeguards. And, Madam Speaker, this brings me to clause 32, which deals with the powers of the minister, or rather the minister's overriding power. And this is the most dangerous clause of the bill. It states the minister may give such directions of a general nature to the institute in the national interest, and the institute shall comply. Madam Speaker, national interest is not defined. General nature is not defined. This is merely a blank check to the minister, who can direct the institute to prioritize research that supports a political narrative, Madam Speaker, and I am going to give two concrete examples to this House, Madam Speaker. First, let's say we are talking of, in the first instance, on energy policy. Mauritius is debating its energy mix. The institute is asked to study the feasibility of solar microgrids in rural areas. The research finds that decentralized renewable energy is more cost-effective and equitable than expanding the central grid. But, Madam Speaker, this finding challenges existing utility contracts and investment plan. Under clause 32, the minister could direct the institute to reassess, for example, the methodology, or broaden the scope indefinitely. The study, Madam Speaker, never sees the light of the day. Public debate is deprived of independent evidence in that case, Madam Speaker. Another example, the Institute commissioned research on wage disparities.
I'm sorry, these are real cases?
No.
This is what you're saying?
This can happen with this piece of legislation, Madam Speaker.
They're not real cases.
Yeah, but then we should...
No, go ahead.
Madam Speaker, the data reveals significant gaps linked to gender, region, and ethnicity. Publishing these findings could fuel public debate or opposition criticism, Madam Speaker. The minister, citing what is there in the law, national interest, could direct the institute to delay publication, redact key findings, or commission a balanced counter-study. And the result, research, unfortunately, under this bill, Madam Speaker, becomes a tool for managing perception and not advancing truth, Madam Speaker. And this is why I believe this clause will suppress findings that are inconvenient and delay studies on sensitive topics, Madam Speaker. The 2019 Act had no such provision, Madam Speaker. Why add it now? Scientific integrity requires insulation from political pressure. This clause, unfortunately, removes that insulation. Now, allow me to come back to clause 15 and also address clause 20. Board members and the CEO serve 3-year terms and renewable. Madam Speaker, research does not work on 3-year cycles. Breakthrough takes time. Talent needs stability. A researcher offered a 3-year contract will not commit to a decade-long project, Madam Speaker. You will agree that some of them will leave the country for more secure institutions abroad. We are building a knowledge economy, yet we're designing governance structures that promote in the short term. The 2019 Act allowed for more flexible tenure arrangements. This bill locks us into political appointment cycles, unfortunately. Madam Speaker, allow me to address clause 28, which deals with estimate of income and expenditure. It is stated in the bill that the Institute must submit annual estimates for ministerial approval. There is no statutory guarantee for baseline funding, no multi-year budget framework. Madam Speaker, research cannot thrive on annual appropriations subject to political whims. The MRIC had clearer grant disbursement mechanisms. This bill replaces them with a general fund depending on ministerial discretion. Clause 27 stipulates that all monies go into this fund, and clause 28 says the minister can approve only part of the estimate. This is not financial autonomy for an institution. This is financial vulnerability, Madam Speaker. Let me share some views with regard to clause 31, which deals with intellectual property. Clause 31 vests intellectual property rights in the creator. This is positive. It encourages innovation. But the clause also allows the institute to assign intellectual property to sponsors on such terms and conditions as they may mutually agree. Who negotiate these terms? The institute's management, under whose oversight a board appointed by the minister. Madam Speaker, I'm afraid that without transparent arm's length negotiation protocols, this provision risks favoring well-connected private interest over public benefit. Where is the requirement for open licensing of publicly funded research? Where is the mandate for public access to findings? I shall now, Madam Speaker, address clauses 23 and 24, which deals with the coordinating council and the role and functions of the council. The coordinating council sounds useful. It brings together CEOs of research agency, but unfortunately clauses 24 give gives it only advisory functions. It shall advise. It may facilitate. It can contribute. And these are weak verbs, Madam Speaker, in this bill. Meanwhile, the Institute under Clause 4 has executive powers to commission research, build labs, hire staff. What stops? The question is, what stops the Institute from bypassing existing agencies? What prevents duplication under the pretext of coordination? What this bill is creating, Madam Speaker, is a new layer of bureaucracy without resolving the fragmentation it claims to fix. And finally, Madam Speaker, let me come to Clause 37, which deals with confidentiality and criminal penalties. Clause 37 imposes strict confidentiality on officers and board members. Any breach of that clause carries a fine of 100,000 rupees and up to 2 years imprisonment. Therefore, whistleblowers who expose misuse of funds, political interference or flawed research could face jail term. Where is the public interest defense? Where is the protection of those who reveal wrongdoing? Transparency, Madam Speaker, is essential for public trust in science. And this clause chills accountability, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I believe that this piece of legislation requires amendment. Without proper safeguard, this bill risks creating a research institute that is efficient at delivering political outputs, but ineffective at producing independent, transformative science. Madam Speaker, research is not a service industry for government. It is about challenging assumption and should be able to question power. It therefore requires freedom, Madam Speaker. And let me tell the government of the day that if they want to serve the country, it's not through a politically motivated institute that this will happen, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to intervene on this extremely important bill. I rise today to offer my unequivocal support for the National Research and Innovation Institute bill. This is more than a timely piece of legislation. It is a foundational necessity for the future of our republic. At the outset, I wish to congratulate the mover of the bill for coming with this piece of legislation. The Honourable Minister, who himself comes from academia, knows the pertinence of research and innovation. Mauritius stands at a decisive crossroads. We have reached the limits of traditional growth. Our aspiration to become a high-income, knowledge-driven economy is bold, but it remains a distant shore until we build the bridge of systematic research and innovation to reach it. This bill comes at a crucial time when we have geopolitical upheavals, uncertainties, and tensions. Still, our zeal is to harness research and innovation. This should not be dampened by what we have just heard by the leader of the opposition. Having been part of the academia, Honourable Minister, for some time, humbly I'm saying it, without being pedantic, I think if it were a viva, it would have got the mention referral. I am not being nasty, but I think we need to compare likes and likes. The leader of the opposition says he supports research and innovation, but I don't know how come he has been looking for nitty-gritty here and there to cast doubt on the bill, on the intention of the bill. Earlier during the day, I told a friend, jaundiced eyes see yellow everywhere. And the honorable leader of the opposition has not left behind his political lens. He's talking like a politician. And the more he talks like a politician, the more he insults academia. He insults the core of researchers, of scientists, Mauritian academics. By the way, by his approach, he sees yellow everywhere, he sees problems everywhere. And I'm disappointed, really disappointed by the way he has delved into such a piece of legislation. Does he want a status quo where on this side of the house we are vouching for what? For innovation. What do we want? We want to leave a legacy for young emerging researchers, but at the same time for established researchers. We said it. We don't want research to be fragmented. Unfortunately, I will say, from academia's perspective, I would say that both my ears for those who belong to academia, his ontological and epistemological paradigms are erroneous. And when we do research, we have two words which we shouldn't miss. One is reliability, second one is validity. When we talk about validity, we have dependent validity and independent validity. Now, the quality of his analysis, I better not comment more because I have more serious things to do in this house. Centralized, he's against centralized research and innovation systems. I would ask him to go and look at literature and try to see what are Germany, Japan, United States, Taiwan, Australia doing. Are these countries wrong in bringing a national institute for research and innovation? Allow me, Madam Speaker, to delve on this bill. I will not, like him, wear a political lens. Let me look at this bill from a small island developing state perspective. When we did our research, for our master's, for our PhD, at least one chapter or paragraph, we have to look at it being Mauritians. Because for a small island developing state, perspective changes. This is what the Honorable Leader of Opposition completely missed in his analysis. And secondly, I will look at it as the Minister of Education and Human Resource. For a small island developing state, since research and innovation are not just academic pursuits, they are essential tools for building resilience against unique geographical and economic vulnerabilities like we face. By focusing on targeted technological and systemic shifts, we can transform constraints into competitive advantages. This is what we are proposing through the creation of this institute. Madam Speaker, how do we prepare our country for an economy that is changing faster than ever before? How do we prepare our young people for jobs that do not yet exist? How do we ensure that Mauritius remains competitive in a world where innovation is increasingly determining which countries move forward and which countries fall behind? These are serious national questions. These are not political questions. And this bill responds to those questions. By establishing the National Research and Innovation Institute, government is creating a stronger national mechanism to support applied research, innovation, evidence-based policymaking, the development of new economic sectors by driving the transition of Mauritius into a resilient, competitive, and knowledge-powered economy. This reform is both practical and forward-looking. It strengthens the country's capacity to use research more effectively in addressing national challenges and preparing Mauritius for future economic opportunities. Madam Speaker, I refer to Section 6 of the bill, where we can read that the National Research and Innovation Institute shall, in collaboration with relevant ministries, government agencies, the private sector, and international partners, conduct strategic research for the identification. It is not the minister who will be choosing. I don't know how. He was completely misled in his reading of the bill. Madam Speaker, we are talking about collaboration among different ministries. I don't think the Honorable Minister will decide what the other Minister of Health or Agro will have as policy making. All right, there will be collaboration. Feasibility studies, rightly said. Market analyzers for emerging industries and economic activities. Research into the development of the ocean economy, green economy, public health, digital transformation, creative industries, biotechnology, energy sustainability and sovereignty, social inequality, advanced manufacturing, work-life balance, and other sectors of strategic national interest. I can't find how it is being hijacked politically. Madam Speaker, let us be clear. This bill represents a structural reform of profound national importance. It proposes to reduce duplication. This is what perhaps the leader of the opposition wanted. It proposes to reduce duplication and promote interdisciplinary collaboration. Let that be clear. I also wish to thank and acknowledge all those men and women who have been involved in research and innovation over decades and decades, who have contributed in so many groundbreaking research and innovation despite limited resources and difficult circumstances. The pioneers of research and innovation have to be saluted for their commendable work that they have done so far. But today we are going one step further in our wish to equip our country with a sort of one-stop shop for research and innovation by building a critical mass of researchers and scientists to support knowledge-based economy. And this is crucial for a small island developing state. Indeed, Mauritius already possesses significant research capability. The problem is that these efforts are currently fragmented, siloed, and under-leveraged. We are data-rich, but inside pool, because our research is not always strategically aligned with our national goals. Section 5, Part 2 of the bill clearly stipulates that the Institute may, at the request of any ministry or government agency, second research officers to provide technical assistance to support or conduct the research and preparation of evidence policy briefs, analytical reports, and impact assessments. The NRII is going to be a game changer. It sets up a centralized, mission-driven powerhouse designed to, first, align research with our highest national priorities. 2, strengthen rigorous evidence into the heart of policymaking. 3rd, coordinate a scattered ecosystem into a unified force. And 4th, support the emergence of an entirely new economic sector. Madam Speaker, a modern state requires robust analytical capacity to navigate global volatility. The NRII is an investment in governance and efficiency. I repeat it. The NRII is an investment in governance, I would add good governance and efficiency. By rooting our decisions in rigorous data rather than institution, we eliminate waste and ensure that every rupee of public resource is directed towards high-impact outcomes. Madam Speaker, as Minister of Education and Human Resource, I see very clearly why this bill matters so much. Very often, our young people, we tell our young people, study hard, work hard, develop yourself, prepare for the future. But we must also ask ourselves a very important question. Are we preparing them to be future ready? A student sitting in a classroom today may enter the labor market in 10 years that will look completely different. Artificial intelligence is changing industries. Biotechnology is changing industries. Digital transformation is changing industries. Some jobs may disappear. New jobs will emerge. If our education and training systems do not evolve fast enough, we risk preparing young Mauritians for opportunities that may no longer exist. That is why this bill matters. It will help Mauritius identify future economic sectors and future workforce needs. And once those needs are identified, our schools, technical institutions, universities, and training institutions must respond accordingly. This also requires continued emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education so that our young Mauritians are better positioned to take part in emerging industries and innovation-driven sectors. Madam Speaker, this bill also recognizes something very important. Research cannot remain confined within universities. Government must work with universities. Universities must work with industry. Industry must work with government. If these institutions continue if these institutions continue operating in isolation, Mauritius loses opportunities.
Don't be distracted.
No, I will not. Without proper coordination, valuable research outcomes may remain underutilized. Innovation may be delayed, and important economic opportunities may be lost. This bill helps create stronger coordination across these institutions. That is exactly what Mauritius needs. Madam Speaker, let us consider how research can directly solve practical national challenges, for example, in relation to food security. Research can help Mauritius to better determine which crops are best suited for specific regions based on soil condition, climate patterns, and water availability. This can strengthen agricultural planning and improve long-term food resilience. Research can also help Mauritius identify emerging industries and ensure that our education and training institutions are preparing young people for future employment opportunities. Madam Speaker, as the Minister of Education and Human Resource, it is my duty to work on the human capital development. My ministry will closely collaborate with NRII to stimulate the brain gain effect that is mentioned there. It is imperative to create proper ecosystem for retention of Mauritian talent. We must provide high-level career path for the nation's brightest students, preventing them from feeling they must move abroad to pursue a career in science or technology. We must rethink skill transformation with the setting up of the NRII. It must act as a bridge between the education system and the labor market, ensuring that the curriculum evolves alongside global technological shifts. Madam Speaker, we should not forget that we need to forge our international prestige and ensure international collaboration. For a small island state like Mauritius to punch above its weight on the global stage, we need to reconsider our role as regional leader by specializing in a niche. tropical medicine, oceanography, an island can become a regional hub for excellence, attracting international grants and partnerships. Accurate research will allow the state to speak with more authority in international forums like the UN or COP summits, backed by empirical evidence of their specific challenges. Madam Speaker, education should move from rote learning to a competency-based curriculum. The research here focuses on digital literacy and pedagogical innovations that prepare students for a green and digital economy, ensuring that at-risk learners are not left behind. The bill proposes to enlist the support of women and youth in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the field of research and innovation. My ministry is already collaborating with Mauritius Telecom and the Ministry of ICT to empower our kids and provide them alternative modes of learning. The NRII can act as the bridge between current educational practices and the evolving needs of a modern economy. For a small island state where human capital is the most valuable resource, it is important that the education system is agile, data-driven, and future-proof. Madam Speaker, education systems often struggle with curriculum lag, where the skills taught in schools don't match the requirements of the job market. The Institute can address the skill gap by revamping ongoing research into the local and global market trends, shifts towards the blue economy or green energy to inform periodic curriculum updates. We need to opt for tailored pedagogy by researching how our students learn best, considering language, culture, and the environmental factors to develop teaching methods that improve literacy and numeracy competencies of our children. Madam Speaker, we need to produce a testing ground for digital tools, ensuring that technology serves the teacher rather than replacing them. Development of interactive pedagogical materials to boost up teaching and learning. Madam Speaker, we need to encourage teachers to become researchers in their own classrooms, helping them identify what works and scaling those successes across the national school network. It is high time that we set up clear, data-backed benchmarks for school performance and teacher efficacy, moving away from subjective assessments toward a standardized culture of excellence. Education is not just about academics. It is about the well-being of the whole child. Psychosocial research will help to investigate the root causes of indiscipline, bullying, or disengagement within schools to develop preventive frameworks rather than purely punitive ones. Impact of mobile phones and tablets on students' well-being also may be researched. The Institute will help to bridge the gap between secondary school and tertiary institutions as it will ease the transition from secondary school to workforce or university. Madam Speaker, I also wish to highlight the issue of talent. Mauritius invests significant resources in education, tertiary development, and workforce training. It is therefore important that we create sufficient opportunities for highly skilled Mauritians to contribute meaningfully within our economy. We must create an environment where talent can thrive locally, and we must create opportunities for Mauritian researchers and innovators to contribute to national knowledge-based economy. With these words, Madam Speaker, I commend the National Research and Innovation Institute Bill to the House. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Etoiria, I would appeal to members to be concise because we have a long list of orators. Thank you. Go ahead, Honourable.
Madame la Présidente, je voulais presque vous demander pardon. Tout à l'heure, quand le leader de l'opposition est en train de faire son discours, il a parlé du développement des industries basées sur les connaissances traditionnelles. J'ai trouvé très intéressant. Et puis, je n'ai pas pu m'empêcher de lui poser d'une position assise, lesquelles, évidemment, il n'a pas répondu, peut-être qu'il n'a pas entendu, mais il n'a pas répondu.
Moi, j'ai entendu.
Vous l'avez entendu, mais il n'a pas répondu. Je suis désolé, Madame la Présidente, de dire que le leader de l'opposition aujourd'hui a fait un discours que pour faire des discours. Il aurait dû, au fait, dans un débat comme celui d'aujourd'hui, s'abstenir. Parce qu'il est resté dans des généralités. Il n'a pas apporté des points importants sur un sujet aussi important pour notre croissance, pour notre économie de demain. Moi, quand j'ai appris qu'on allait débattre de ce projet de loi, je me suis dit, mais pourquoi on ne l'a pas fait auparavant? Parce que tous les pays de la planète, qu'ils soient, tous les pays, peut-être les pays africains un peu moins, mais même là, il ne faut pas sous-estimer les pays africains ou les pays d'Amérique du Sud qui ont tous établi des centres de recherche et de l'innovation parce qu'ils savent que c'est l'innovation qui sera la matière première qui fera vivre les économies de demain. Comme nous, on a vécu sur la canne à sucre, ensuite sur le textile, la finance, l'immobilier. What next? Peut-être le ministre aujourd'hui est en train de poser les premiers jalons pour notre économie de demain. Donc, c'est normal que je les félicite. Je félicite le ministre Soucon qui, somme toute, entend donner à la recherche, à l'innovation et à la toute-puissance, parce qu'il reconnaît à la toute-puissance intellectuelle mauricienne les lettres de noblesse et leur juste place au sein de l'économie mauricienne. Son message est limpide. Nous ne produisons pas de riz, nous ne produisons pas d'essence, mais nous pouvons produire des idées. Nous ne sommes pas dans la beauté du geste, on est dans l'impératif économique. Les pays qui progressent le plus investissent dans la recherche et l'innovation. Comme je disais avant, Madame la Présidente, je ne comprends pas pourquoi on n'a pas créé une telle instance auparavant. Elle répond pourtant à des aspirations qui ne sont pas nouvelles. Elle renforce la compétitivité, le ministre l'a dit, elle encourage l'innovation et elle soutient l'émergence d'une économie fondée sur la connaissance. En réalité, le ministre Soucon installe aujourd'hui une usine à idées. Les idées, oui, Madame la Présidente, ça compte. Nous savons que le plus grand hôtelier du monde n'a pas une seule chambre et que le plus grand service de taxi n'a pas une seule voiture. Bien sûr, je parle de Booking.com et de Uber, des idées simples, mais qui brassent des milliards aujourd'hui. Je vais axer mon discours, les restes de mon discours, sur un aspect que je trouve important. Et pour mettre toutes les chances de notre côté, je pense qu'il faudra accorder une importance à cela. Le projet de loi ne limite pas le champ d'action de cet institut. Mais forcément, les recherches se dérouleront dans nos domaines de prédilection, la mer, les nouvelles technologies des communications, les services financiers s'y prêtent à merveille. Mais surtout, notre pays, avec sa biodiversité unique et riche, 39% de nos plantes sont endémiques, ainsi que nos connaissances traditionnelles offrent des perspectives illimitées. Madame la Présidente, qui dit l'innovation, dit aussi la propriété intellectuelle. Nous devons protéger l'innovation issue de notre patrimoine unique. Il faut se donner les moyens de gérer les brevets issus de projets financés par l'État. Il faut aussi garantir un partage équitable des bénéfices. Il faut prévenir toute biopiraterie et cela est important quand nous savons que la biopiraterie est aujourd'hui une forme moderne de pillage des ressources naturelles par les laboratoires européens et américains. La biopiraterie menace directement les nations qui, comme la nôtre, possèdent une diversité unique et des riches traditions, bien sûr, médicales et agricoles. Nous savons tous, nous nous souvenons tous, lorsque nous avions la fièvre ou un peu de tout, quand on était gamin, la grand-mère ou la maman nous donnait un peu de sirop de la feuille d'apana.
Robert.
Voilà. Madame la Présidente, vous avez certainement lu les ouvrages de l'ancienne présidente de la République, Madame Amina Garib Hakim, en la matière, notamment Guide illustré de la flore de Maurice et de l'océan Indien, Lesser Known Underutilized Crops, ou encore Plantes médicinales de Maurice, Pharmacognosie, phytochimie et études comparatives des données ethnobotaniques. L'île Maurice compte, Madame la Présidente, 315 plantes endémiques qui ont un potentiel médicinal. Je vais vous donner cette petite information. Selon l'OMS, 25% des médicaments modernes viennent des plantes. Le marché mondial des médicaments pèse 100 milliards, ou pèsera 100 milliards de roupies en 2030. Si Maurice capte 0,01% grâce à ces plantes endémiques, ça nous fera 5 milliards de roupies par année. Il y a une filière, il y a un fil à tirer, Madame la Présidente. Et ça, seulement on peut le faire grâce à la protection intellectuelle et en combattant de façon efficace la biopiraterie. Je vais mélanger les chiffres, c'est bien. La bonne nouvelle, comme je disais, Madame la Présidente, nous sommes assis sur une mine d'or, en fait. Quand je parlais de ces 315 plantes potentielles médicinales, c'est notre pétrole vert. C'est notre pétrole vert qui peuvent nous apporter de la croissance de demain. Ça, c'est la bonne nouvelle. Il y a aussi une mauvaise nouvelle, que ce sont les entreprises étrangères qui exploitent nos plantes, nos remèdes et nos connaissances léguées par nos grands-mères, comme je le disais avant. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il n'existe pas de registre centralisé plantes mauriciennes brevetées. Pourquoi? Parce que la majorité des travaux de l'Université de Maurice, JMSI en rail, restent au stade académique. L'étape suivante, c'est-à-dire l'isolement du principe actif, le brevet et ensuite le financement, la transformation en produits commercialisables nous manque. Nos chercheurs s'exilent. Résultat, aucun brevet majeur mauricien ne recensé dans les bases de données de l'OMPI. Depuis ces 10 dernières années, l'OMPI étant l'Organisation mondiale pour la protection intellectuelle, basée à Genève. L'IP Office mauricien ne gère rien, en fait, excusez-moi, ne gère rien de la biodiversité locale, alors que nous avons tous ces potentiels. Et pourtant, et ça c'est important, des brevets déposés à Londres, Paris, New York, à Genève, des brevets citent des specimens from Mauritius, sans que l'IP Office mauricien ait de quelconques traces des Material Transfer Agreements. C'est un peu technique, mais nos plantes sont exploitées par des compagnies à l'étranger et nous ne savons même pas qu'ils ont ce potentiel. En gros, ça veut dire échantillon sorti de Maurice, brevet déposé à l'étranger, 0 retour pour Maurice. Le protocole de Nagoya 2020, si je ne me trompe pas, Nagoya, oblige les détenteurs de brevets à déclarer l'origine de la molécule. Mais voilà, Maurice a signé le protocole de Nagoya, mais il n'a pas intégré dans sa loi nationale. Ce qui veut dire que n'importe qui peut breveter un produit basé dans la matière première et basé à Maurice, mais le produit final sort des laboratoires à l'étranger.
Mais faites le lien avec le projet de loi, s'il vous plaît. Faites le lien avec le projet de loi.
Je vais venir,
La
madame.
recherche.
Je vais y venir. Sans une protection intellectuelle efficace, nous laissons la porte grande ouverte au vol de notre biodiversité. Il y a trop de cas dans l'histoire qui montrent que les voleurs sont à l'œuvre. Au fait, ils sont à l'œuvre depuis le début. Vous savez, dans les expéditions coloniales, quand il y avait des expéditions qui partaient en Afrique, il y avait toujours des botanistes qui partaient avec pour regarder qu'est-ce qu'il y avait de précieux comme plantes. Je propose, pour faire les liens, madame, je propose que le National Research and Innovation Institute agisse comme les gardiens de notre biodiversité.
Voilà. Voilà.
Qu'il soit tenu de publier chaque année un rapport, pas seulement de l'audit des dépenses et des rentrées financières, un rapport d'impact qui soit soumis au Parlement et mis à la disposition du public. Ce rapport devrait présenter les montants investis, les résultats obtenus, les brevets déposés et les partenariats signés. Car la transparence est la clé de cette confiance et la science publique doit rendre des comptes à la nation. Je vais terminer, madame, en disant que nous sommes une petite île. Et puis, nous sommes très riches en biodiversité, mais peut-être nous n'avons pas tous les moyens. Donc, nous devrions nous ouvrir à la coopération internationale. La science, la recherche moderne n'a pas de frontières. L'innovation se nourrit de la coopération entre nations. Le futur institut doit être un pont entre la science mauricienne et le reste du monde. Je vois 3 alliances possibles. Et il ne faut pas faire la fine bouche. La Chine, première nation au monde au nombre de dépôts de brevets, selon l'Organisation mondiale de la propriété intellectuelle. Collaborer avec la Chine, c'est accéder à une immense capacité technologique, des moyens financiers, mais aussi aux supercalculateurs chinois. L'Inde, partenaire historique et culturel majeur de Maurice, ce grand pays a su développer des modèles d'innovation frugale adaptés aux pays en voie de développement comme le nôtre. Enfin, on ne peut pas oublier nos partenaires africains avec qui nous partageons des défis communs. Et cela est important, santé, résilience climatique, énergie propre. Mais toute cette coopération doit être équilibrée. Nous devons veiller, et cela est important, nous devons veiller à un transfert réciproque des compétences et une reconnaissance mutuelle des droits des propriétés intellectuelles. Ce nouvel institut ne doit pas être un lieu clos réservé à quelques experts. Il doit devenir un catalyseur des créativités nationales, un pont entre chercheurs, entrepreneurs, agriculteurs, artistes, jeunes. Parce que l'innovation, ce n'est pas seulement inventer.
Oui, vous vous égarez un peu dans les papiers, là.
L'innovation, Madame la Présidente, ce n'est pas seulement faire travailler les laboratoires. Il faut, en fin de compte, c'est trouver des solutions à nos problèmes quotidiens. Sinon, l'innovation ne sert à rien. Je dirais qu'on a raté la révolution industrielle au XIXe siècle. On n'était pas là. On n'était même pas là, comme je disais. On a raté la révolution numérique. On n'était pas assez développé. Nous n'avons pas le droit de rater la révolution de brevets au XXIe siècle, car le brevet et la protection de ce brevet sont bien le fruit de la recherche et de l'innovation et la source de notre future croissance économique. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Je vous remercie, c'était très intéressant. Honorable François.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before proceeding with my intervention on this National Research Innovation Institute Bill number 4, 2026, as I have the floor, allow me, on behalf of the OPR Party and the people of Rhodes, to extend officially our warm congratulations on the symbolic nomination of the first female Deputy Prime Minister and today Acting Prime Minister, Honorable Ariane Mari, following the Prime Minister's choice. This marks a meaningful new chapter for our Republic, reflecting the growing role of women in leadership and serving as an inspiration to women and young girls who aspire to higher responsibilities in politics, public service, and national leadership. We have moved from dream to reality for women in our republic. I wish the Honorable DPM, as she continues to serve our republic and beyond her commitment to national unity, may she champion reconciliation and support women in facing the climate crisis and its multifaceted impacts. May her new responsibilities be marked by progress, success, and continued positive impact on our republic. Thank you, Madam. Now, Speaker, coming back to the bill, in his last budget speech on strategic economic renewal, the Honorable Prime Minister prioritized shaping an innovative Mauritius as well as in the government program. The ambition of this bill to establish a National Research and Innovation Institute, as presented by Honorable Sukron, whom I congratulate, to replace the Mauritius Research and Innovation Council is sound and in principle a good bill. Mauritius needs a centralized mission-oriented research body if it is to transition from a service economy to a genuine knowledge-powered economy. I acknowledge that intent, however, intent must translate into delivery, and it is delivery that this House must scrutinize. So, my question is, how will this bill ambitions translate into on-the-ground research delivery in Mauritius and critically in Rodrigues? Architecturally, the bill is elegant, with 5 divisions, a scientific advisory council, and a coordinating council. Now, let me comment on a few clauses to seek greater clarity. Clause 2. Interpretation. The word innovation is not defined anywhere in the bill, as this is the National Institute. Innovation drives 4 key divisions, as listed in Clause 8b to E, which define responsibilities in their respective clauses: Partnership and Innovation Division, Clause 12, Strategy Division, Clause 10, Capacity Building and Talent Development Division, Clause 13, and the Intellectual Property Framework, Clause 31. Yet, the term innovation has no statutory definition. Without a definition, any activity could be labeled innovative and funded accordingly, with no accountability framework. Clauses around mission-oriented research and national research and innovation priorities should be transparent about how priorities are set to avoid a drift towards narrow sector specific priorities. My question, who decide which mission-oriented research projects take priority each year? Is it the institute, the board, or the minister? Clause 30, powers of the minister grants sweeping general directive powers, as this is standard in our legislation. However, we must ensure this does not compromise the scientific independence of the institute to preserve integrity and objectivity. Clause 16E requires the board to monitor and commission independent evaluations every 5 years. Now, Speaker, in our fast-changing society, 5 years may be too long to detect underperformance. Can Mauritius and Rodrigues afford to wait half a decade not to be embarked in what the Honorable Sukron said, valley of death gap, like development in penicillin? Madam Speaker, key performance indicators are crucial. I propose the Honorable Minister to introduce an obligation to publish annual KPIs, including number of research outputs published per year, Rodrigues specific research engagements per annum, private sector partnerships, and co-funding arrangement activated. Now, Speaker, Clause 31 on intellectual property is the most commercially consequential and requires robust expansion. The bill should clearly outline how IP generated by the Institute or by researchers using its resources will be commercially exploited so that Mauritius can capture the economic value. We should look to effective international models, for example, Ireland's research commercialization framework and Singapore, A-STAR, who pushes science towards real-world outcomes and contributes significantly to GDP and employment. Intellectual property is not just a legal right, it is a revenue stream an FDI magnet, and a driver of high-skilled job creation. I hope the Institute will bridge the gap between science and market-ready solutions from lab to startup and from lab to market. Clause 2D mentions co-funding arrangement and tax incentive programs, but these are functions, not entitlements. The framework for tax benefits must be laid out in the Income Tax Act or in the Investment Promotion Act, not left to regulatory discretion. And my question is, will the Ministry of Finance commit to amending the tax framework to create research and development incentives and a patent commercialization regime that give this institute intellectual property outputs real economic teeth? Singapore and Ireland generate hundreds of millions from IP commercialization annually. Mauritius is, as rightly mentioned by Honorable Sokron, is ranked 53rd on Global Innovation Index and #1 in Sub-Saharan Africa. And Mauritius has the legal framework to begin this journey if the Ministry of Finance aligns with what this bill promises, which can be addressed in the next budget itself. Madam Speaker, I now address Rodrigues specifically. Rodrigues represents an ideal territory to serve as a national sustainable island living laboratory, as it is itself a natural laboratory for research. I will elaborate during my speech on how innovative solutions addressing climate resilience, food security, sustainable tourism, ocean economy development, water and renewable energy transition can be piloted in Rodrigues. And Speaker, I note that there is no specific definition for Rodrigues or outer islands, nor any geographic scope in the bill. The bill is silent on whether the Institute mandate extend to Rodrigues, Agalega, or outer islands, despite mentions of collaboration with government agencies. This omission, I believe, may affect funding, research coverage, and whether Rodrigues' specific challenges fall within the statute's scope. A definition of national that explicitly includes Rodrigues and outer islands will be a step forward. Madam Speaker, during budget debates 2025-2026, I noted Mauritius' new culture of innovation as a policy priority. This is in line with my party OPR vision of Road Innovation, Rodrigues' new innovation culture, a model of innovation, technology, and modernity. Rodrigues has strong potential in priority sectors such as Rodrigues Blue and Economy Innovation, Rodrigues Sustainable Food System, Rodrigues Climate Innovation and Resilience, Rodrigues Circular Economy, Rodrigues Community and Grassroots Innovation, and Rodrigues Supporting Grassroots and Youth Innovation. Madam Speaker, Rodrigues' social fabric provides a solid foundation for social innovation, where social needs meets environmental sustainability and prosperity. I propose that government should establish alongside the Institute what I call a social innovation driving unit with appropriate budgetary support and resources. Development research for Rodrigues social innovations reflecting local culture remains a fertile area of future research while we pursue le rêve rodriguais. Health issues, including cancer and NCDs and demographic changes, are important avenues for Rodrigues-focused research. To strengthen Rodrigues' presence, the NRII bill should empower the new NRII research branch with greater capacity, facilities, and staffing following the 2024 fire that destroyed the MRIC office there at. And Speaker, I propose an amendment to the bill to create a Rodrigues Research and Innovation Center or a directorate with necessary staffing in collaboration with the Rodrigues Regional Assembly. This would integrate Rodrigues specificity, challenges, and opportunities into the national innovation system in a concrete and actionable way. This inclusion will officially recognize Rodrigues as a distinctive component of the Institute with a defined mission and responsibilities for Rodrigues-specific programs, coordinating activities, and supporting the Regional Assembly policy needs under the guidance and collaborations of the Institute and the Regional Assembly. Madam Speaker, I strongly believe that this bill offers a strategic opportunity for Mauritius to position Rodrigues as a sustainable island innovation demonstration territory and national innovation priority by strengthening the NRII Rodrigues branch. As it aligns with OPR's New Horizon Vision 2051 for Rodrigues, moving towards excellence in all what we do, fostering an inclusive research community, and delivering benefits for the people of Rodrigues and Rodrigues society at large. This bill must explicitly enable a Rodrigues branch or directorate with clear, I mentioned it again, clear staffing, budgetary autonomy, and a mandate to co-design programs in collaboration with the regional assembly. I propose also the creation of a Rodrigues Research and Innovation Fund within the budget framework to finance pilot projects, capacity buildings, and public-private partnership in Rodrigues. Such a structure will empower Rodrigues to pilot climate resilience, blue economy solutions, sustainable tourism, and youth-led innovation in a way that scales nationally. It will also ensure transparent accountability with dedicated reporting on Rodrigues research outputs and impact. Now, Speaker, to conclude, I urge the House to consider amendments that define Rodrigues within the geographic scope of NRII and to set binding mechanism for collaboration between the Institute, the Regional Assembly, and the new NRII branch Rodrigues. I urge thoughtful consideration of proposed amendments to ensure that Rodrigues is explicitly, again, included, adequately funded, and empowered to act as a national hub for innovation and sustainable development. These amendments will cement Rodrigues' role as a strategic innovation demonstration territory within the Republic of Mauritius and help realize the OPR Road Innovation Vision. OPR, Road Innovation. Okay. I have to mention OPR. I love it. Madam Speaker, I commend the Honorable Minister Sukro for introducing this bill. Mauritius can harness the full potential of NRI to drive inclusive growth, protect our environment, and unlock opportunities, especially for our youth, through a non-fragmented and coordinating approach to build a better future for our Republic. With these words, I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping good time. Yes, Honorable Bablal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To allow me to intervene on the National Research and Innovation Institute Bill. While this bill seeks to bury the Innovation Council Act of 2019, we must ask ourselves, are we burying a failed system or simply redressing its ghost in a new uniform? Madam Speaker, we are told this is a landmark step towards a resilient, knowledge-powered economy. We heard those same soaring adjectives in 2019, yet here we are again. If we do not fix the engine of our institutional design, then in 2099, a new government will bring a new bill to repeal this one, to innovate again. Madam Speaker, the Republic cannot afford to move in circles while the rest of the world moves forward. Madam Speaker, we embrace the ambition of this bill, the desire to harness the ocean, green and digital economies. However, the concerns raised today strike at the heart of our national dilemma. The cavernous gap between legislative intent and operational reality, its structural integrity is rarely achieved through the text of a law alone. Madam Speaker, to determine if this bill can truly eradicate systematic underperformance, we must look for the specific teeth within the legislation. Does the bill move beyond simply noting failures? Does it introduce personal consequences for accounting officers who oversee wasted expenditure? Does it provide for independent mid-project audits that can halt a failing project before billions are lost, rather than relying on a post-mortem from the Auditor General? Does it bridge the administrative capacity gap by mandating specific qualifications for project managers? Or does it leave appointment to the same system that produced these nil results? Madam Speaker, history suggests that without a fundamental shift in accountability, new laws become mere paperwork, masking recurring failures. The Republic cannot afford for noble intentions to be the only thing on our ledger. Under the 2019 Act, the Minister appointed the chairpersons. Billions in taxpayers' money were lost. Now again, the Minister will appoint the CEO and the chairperson. If we do not change the system, why should we expect a different result? Madam Speaker, the bill suffers from the vanguard of centralization. By granting the Minister total dominion over the appointment of the board and the CEO, we are not building a sanctuary for science. We are building a playground for patronage. When research follows the preferences of power rather than the pursuit of truth, it ceases to be innovation. It becomes propaganda. Madam Speaker, let us look at clause 34. Protection from liability. No liability, civil or criminal, shall attach to the institute, the board, a board member, a committee member, or any officer in respect of any act done or omitted to be done in good faith in the discharge of its or his function under this act. It offers a blanket of immunity for good faith actions. Madam Speaker, good faith must not become a sanctuary for incompetence. Clause 34 should be revisited, as protection from liability must never extend to gross negligence, willful misconduct, or fraud. Without this line in the sand, accountability is an illusion. Vouching for innovation with taxpayers' money needs accountability. Madam Speaker, the Director of Audit has warned us repeatedly. Our state has eyes, but no muscles. More than 50% of audit recommendations are ignored. This is the mechanical reality we must face. If the system is a broken engine, changing the driver will not make the car go faster. Without mechanisms to penalize non-results, this bill is merely a performative announcement. It is all noise and no motion. Madam Speaker, innovation is not a solitary act. It is a collaborative one. Yet, this bill excludes civil society and industry from the boardroom, creating a dangerous echo chamber. We do not need insularity. We need an ecosystem. Madam Speaker, Mauritius does not suffer from lack of intelligence. It suffers from lack of institutional change. Madam Speaker, as long as we prefer the loudness of political outrage over the precision of structural analysis, we will continue to witness failures with remarkable accuracy. We must prove beyond political tribalism towards institutional literacy. We need an independent appointment committee, not just for this institute, but for the soul of our public service, to ensure transparency is the rule, not the exception. Madam Speaker, unless we move from rhetoric to reality, we are not innovating, we are merely recycling promises. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Yes, Honorable Parapet.
Madame la Présidente, le ministre, l'honorable Soukon, nous a ramené plutôt en 1928 à la découverte de la pénicilline. Je me propose de ramener la Chambre à 1945 avec un certain Percy Spencer, américain, ingénieur autodidacte. Il travaille à l'époque pour la compagnie Raytheon, une grande entreprise américaine de la défense, qui à l'époque a innové en créant le radar, une des grandes avancées de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, peut-être la seconde plus grande avancée derrière la fission nucléaire et l'arme nucléaire. Et Percy Spencer est debout devant un magnétron actif, un engin qui émet des micro-ondes. Et à ce moment-là, il va être témoin d'un phénomène assez bizarre. La barre chocolatée qu'il a dans sa poche a fondu. Et au lieu d'être en colère, voilà que sa curiosité est éveillée. Il ramène du pop-corn et le rapproche du magnétron. Et voilà que le pop-corn aussi se transforme immédiatement. Le lendemain, il ramène un œuf et l'œuf éclate au visage de son collègue. Voilà à peu près comment le four à micro-ondes a été inventé, Madame la Présidente. Il faut se rappeler qu'on est dans une période très sombre de l'histoire, 1945, et que cette découverte, qui va ensuite devenir le four à micro-ondes, est faite dans un local destiné à la recherche militaire. Il y a beaucoup de Mauriciens et de Mauriciennes avec qui j'ai la chance d'interchanger et qui me demandent souvent quelles sont les solutions pour le futur de notre pays, surtout dans les conditions actuelles. Et bien sûr, parce que tout le monde ici, je suis sûr qu'on a des idées qu'on voudrait implémenter pour l'avenir de ce pays, mais j'ai une réponse constante à cela. Il faut donner à notre pays un environnement propice à l'innovation. Mais la culture d'innovation, elle ne s'improvise pas. Pour que l'innovation puisse se produire, il y a tout un écosystème à mettre en place. Et c'est pour ça que la découverte du four en micro-ondes par Percy Spencer nous rappelle que cet écosystème ne vient pas du jour au lendemain. On ne peut pas parler d'innovation sans parler de la recherche et du développement, le R&D. Et quand on fait un constat à travers le monde par rapport à la recherche et le développement, on voit quand même que différents pays sont à différents stades en termes de dépenses par rapport à la recherche et le développement. Là, j'ai avec moi une liste des 10 pays qui investissent au moins 3% de leur PIB dans la recherche et le développement. L'Allemagne, l'Autriche, la Belgique, la Suisse, le Japon, les États-Unis, la Suède, Taïwan, la Corée du Sud et Israël. Et ces pays, je pense que tout le monde sera d'accord pour dire que ces pays sont véritablement en avance sur beaucoup d'autres pays à travers le monde en ce qu'il s'agit d'innovation. Et à Maurice, le budget dépensé pour la recherche et du développement et à peine de 0,25% du PIB. Donc le projet de loi du ministre, l'honorable Soukon, est un excellent projet de loi. Il a le mérite d'orienter la recherche nationale ainsi que l'innovation vers des enjeux réels, chose qui était complètement absente de la précédente législation. C'est une excellente initiative de lier la recherche et l'innovation à des problématiques récurrentes de notre société. Souveraineté alimentaire, souveraineté énergétique, résilience climatique, économie océan, économie verte, biotechnologie et j'en passe. C'est des problèmes récurrents et c'est des enjeux où on a un retard considérable. Donc, lier ce nouveau projet de loi à ces problématiques et ces enjeux est salutaire. Parce que on ne fait pas de la recherche que pour faire de la recherche et pour épater la galerie. On fait de la recherche parce qu'on recherche et on a envie de trouver des solutions concrètes à des problèmes récurrents. Sauf que, malgré toute la bonne volonté du ministre, même si ce projet de loi, c'est un excellent projet de loi, si on ne se donne pas les moyens de faire de ce projet de loi un succès, ben la recherche, l'innovation sera que sur papier. Parce que vouloir innover sans s'en donner les moyens, c'est un peu comme vouloir gagner une compétition sans y avoir participé. C'est très compliqué. Et c'est dans cet esprit que je pense qu'il est grand temps que le pays, le gouvernement, l'État se donne les moyens de ses ambitions. Et aujourd'hui, en tant que député de ce gouvernement, mais surtout citoyen ayant à cœur l'avancement de notre pays, je fais un plaidoyer pour que au moins 1% du PIB de la République soit investi dans la recherche et le développement annuellement. Et bien sûr, je ne demande pas à ce que cet argent provienne uniquement des caisses de l'État, mais comme une société, comme une économie, avec des partenariats avec le privé et des collaborateurs internationaux, 1% du PIB représente à peu près 7 milliards de roupies. Avec 7 milliards de roupies, on a quand même un budget suffisant pour faire des projets pilotes à moyenne échelle. Parce que l'innovation est souvent accompagnée d'échecs. Les entrepreneurs le savent mieux que d'autres. Toutes les idées n'aboutissent pas à un succès retentissant. Mais la beauté de l'innovation, c'est que du moment qu'on a un succès, ça peut facilement effacer 9 échecs. Et c'est dans cet état d'esprit que ce projet de loi doit être vu. Je suis sûr que cet institut va venir de l'avant avec plein d'idées, avec beaucoup de recommandations, mais si on n'arrive pas à les mettre en pratique, à au moins essayer de voir qu'est-ce que ça va donner dans la République de Maurice, incluant chez nos frères et sœurs Rodriguez, c'est un peu un coup d'épée dans l'eau. Les innovateurs sont des perturbateurs du statu quo, parce qu'ils posent deux questions fondamentales. Pourquoi faisons-nous les choses de cette façon? Et que se passerait-il si on faisait les choses différemment? Et bien sûr, quand on parle d'innovation, pour la majorité de personnes, l'innovation est souvent rattachée à la technologie. Quand on parle d'innovation, on pense à l'intelligence artificielle, on pense aux large language models, on pense à la technologie informatique, aux microprocesseurs et tout. Mais on ne peut réduire l'innovation seule uniquement à la technologie. Il y a d'autres innovations qui sont extrêmement importantes pour une société. Et là, pour conclure, j'aurais envie de parler de l'innovation sociétale. Maurice est prisonnière du statu quo par rapport à son modèle de gouvernance, son système électoral, depuis bientôt 60 ans. Et aujourd'hui, quand on pense à innover, à venir de l'avant avec un nouveau modèle, un nouveau contrat, certains qui n'aspirent pas probablement au changement mettent de l'avant la loi de Murphy, Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. D'ailleurs, cette loi, elle n'est basée sur aucun fondement scientifique, mais ça rassure ceux qui ne veulent pas que l'innovation sociétale aboutisse. Parce que quand on veut de l'innovation sociétale, il faut se donner les moyens, et les moyens à cette question, ce n'est pas des moyens financiers, mais uniquement une question de courage politique. Donc, pour terminer, je vais reprendre deux phrases que le ministre, l'honorable Soukon, a mentionnées. Il a dit « What we want to achieve is not what Mauritius has been, but what Mauritius should now become. » Et il a aussi dit « Do we want to keep the old structures because they keep us comfortable. » Vive l'innovation, vive les nouveaux modèles, vive le nouveau monde, vive le mauritianisme. Merci.
Merci. Yes, Honorable Narsingen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very, very important bill, and I will comment on 7 points. I have to explain the context of this bill. And my second point, I will deal with the reality of developing countries where the minister and the Ministry of Higher Education has chosen pragmatism over prestige. And I think that, with all due respect, the leader of the opposition is not trying to make that distinction between what is known as fundamental research as opposed to applied research. Now, what this bill is doing also, Madam Speaker, it is trying to bridge the chasm that is, we know about the triple helix model, and this bill with my colleague Minister Soukon, we are shifting from the triple helix model to a better model, what I would call a multiple helix model. And then also, what this bill is trying to do, Madam Speaker, is to do away with red tapeism, and whereby we are trying to empower researchers, but also civil servants, European civil servants. And also, very important, I heard my learned friend, Mr. Babulal, mentioning that civil society is not being involved. Then, Madam Speaker, who is a researcher? Is a researcher not part of civil society? So, and also very important in the bill, the minister and his members of the staff of the ministry has also not forgotten the diaspora. We're going to make appeal to members of the diaspora because we got a number of researchers in the US, in France, and in many other countries. And we need these people. And also, I will deal, if I have time, about the financial accountability, a point which was raised by my learned friend, Mr. Babula. Madame la Présidente, nous vivons à une période, je dirais, très difficile de notre histoire. Très difficile, mais en même temps, une période exaltante. Avec, aujourd'hui, nous parlons beaucoup de AI, l'intelligence artificielle, nous parlons de la biotechnologie, nous parlons de la numérisation, nous parlons de recherche médicale, nous parlons de l'environnement. So today, we stand at a very critical juncture in the economic and social history of our republic. And therefore, my colleague, Mr. Soukon, is right. Either we adapt or we perish. And with this bill, we have chosen to adapt, Madam Speaker. The global economy does not wait for latecomers, and technological advancement does not pause for nations tangled in bureaucratic inertia. We do not have natural resources. The minister mentioned, we do not have oil, we do not have gold, we do not have other minerals. And at the same time, we cannot have a labor-intensive economy, especially with the demographic crisis with a declining population. So we don't have any choice than to have a knowledge-based economy. And the explanatory memorandum, well drafted, Mr. Minister, which hammers on innovation, mission-oriented research, and not only abstract or theoretical research as it used to be. And furthermore, what is important now with this bill, there will be coordination and no duplication. So when you compare the previous Act of Parliament, where we had approximately 25 sections, whereas with this bill we have approximately 45 sections. The previous bill, we had only 4 substantive sections, whereas with this bill we have approximately 24 substantive sections. If this is not progress, what is progress? Madam Speaker. So we are moving away from a theoretical and purely academic research to pragmatic and mission-oriented research. And this is very important. It is a significant shift. And this is not merely a procedural replacement of the repealed Mauritius Research and Innovation Council bill. It is a fundamental rewiring of our national intellect. By establishing the National Research and Innovation Institute as a centralized body dedicated to advancing scientific discovery, applied research, and evidence-based policymaking, we are laying down the infrastructure to transition Mauritius into a resilient, competitive, and knowledge-powered economy. And the leader of the opposition, and to a certain extent, my learned friend, Mr. Babulal, was referring to over-centralization. Madam Speaker, this bill will not preclude other research centers like the University of Mauritius, like UTM, and other private universities to continue to do research. And both my learned friend, Mr. Babulal, and the leader of the opposition failed to understand that as a developing country, we don't have unlimited resources. And that is why it is very, very important to make that distinction between applied research as opposed to fundamental research. In US, in UK, in France, and to a certain extent even South Africa, they can afford to make fundamental research. And as an ex-academic, I'm not saying that we should not do at all fundamental research. According to me, we have to filter. Possibly there are a few geniuses where we can allow fundamental research, but at the same time, if we have funding, this funding has to be destined to applied research, to mission-oriented research, as pointed out in the bill. So, at the same time, Madam Speaker, I think it is important to understand also that we are choosing a model which is pragmatic. Fundamental research seeks knowledge for its own sake, as mentioned by my colleague, my neighbor. It asks why. Applied research, contrastingly, which this bill defines as original investigation directed primarily towards a specific practical aim or objective, and asks how. While developed nations with multi-billion-dollar budgets can afford to spend heavily on open-ended research, Mauritius cannot do that. And at the same time, as an academic, I can say that some of my colleagues in the field of science, a few among them, they have done good research. But unfortunately, also, I have to confess, nothing wrong to confess, that many academics, they are engaged in a pursuit of promotion, and at times some universities, they become like a sort of paper mills. And I think the minister mentioned that we are shelving all these research papers, collecting dust, and there is no practical results. And with a deficiency in funding, Madam Speaker, we have to choose, and this is what the minister, and this is what this bill is doing, to make a choice. So at the same time, look at the trajectory of nations like China. I think the minister mentioned, and some other colleagues mentioned about South Korea, India, and Singapore. In their developmental phases, these countries did not necessarily reinvent the wheel. They mastered what is known as reverse engineering. Just as a sort of anecdote, Madam Speaker, when I was an academic at the university, and also I was based at one time in Geneva, I asked WIPO to come to Mauritius. You know, Madam Speaker, that patents get spent after 20 years. And we, as a developing country, the new institute which we are setting up, of course, with the collaboration of University of Mauritius and other private universities, we can do that reverse engineering. This is what we have to do, and this is what is good with this bill. And so universities and the new research institute can scud expired patents, understood the mechanics, and adapt foreign technologies to the local context. You see, before what we were doing, not only in pure science, but also in social science. Here also, I've seen with my eyes, because when I was at the university, at one time, early stage of my career, I was also doing research just for the sake of research. But when I joined the Law Reform Commission, for 10 years nearly, I've been a member of the Law Reform Commission, with my learned friends, Mr. Daniel Foucan, and my very, very good friend who was an excellent researcher, excellent academic, Mr. Rosario Domingue. This is where I learned how to transform that pure academic research into practical research. And the Attorney General who is here will agree with me how many important papers this Law Reform Commission has produced. And this is what needs to be done. We have to be practical. So, Madam Speaker, another important point, very, very important point, which this bill is trying to break, is to bring together the industry the academia, but not only that, but also because up to now, we have been adopting what I would call a sort of silos approach, which is not good. And this is what this bill purposely is doing, to bring on board not only the academia and the university, but this time, making the civil servants themselves becoming researchers, where civil servants cannot capriciously bring a new bill. They have to get sort of evidence-based research before bringing a new legislation. And even ministers should not bring bills capriciously. They have to rely on evidence-based research, Madam Speaker. So this is what the bill is doing. And over and above that, as I mentioned, the bill is trying also to rope in our researchers from abroad, members of the diaspora. And this is very, very important also. So this partnership, what I call shifting from the triple helix model to the multiple helix model, and the minister has to be congratulated for that, because don't forget that the minister was an expert in statistics, and he knows what research is, and he has also understood what were the shortcomings of traditional research, fundamental research being done, and how, while keeping to a certain extent fundamental research, but at the same time we have to put more focus, more emphasis on practical research, and this is important. So, at the same time, what this institute will be doing, for many, many years, a lot of good work has been done at the University of Mauritius, but unfortunately, there has, at that point in time, there was no incubation centers, and there were no researchers cannot be at the same time entrepreneurs. Whereas, with this bill, the new institute will have a possibility, I'm sure, to recruit people with expertise to commercialize, because at the end of the day, what is important, we have to commercialize what we are trying to bring during our research. Otherwise, it remains abstract. And rightly, not more, I would say wrongly, academics are very often qualified as being in an ivory tower, and we don't need our academics and new researchers to be in an ivory tower. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, I think it is important that we get rid of red tapeism. Just to give you another anecdote. Since 7 months, I approached one Italian university, and I spoke with my colleague. After more than 7 months, Madam Speaker, an MOU has not been signed because, unfortunately, some of these work, they end up in a drawer and no work is being done. And I'm sure this time, with the new institute, the work will be done. But at the same time, I will take a last point, Madam Speaker. I think my friend hinted at that. In spite of all the good intention of the minister, which is a very, very important bill, I think it has sought a lot of inspiration from the best models that we have in Singapore, in South Africa. Don't underestimate South African universities. In spite of that, if we don't put in funding, for example, during the last budget, I think we have earmarked 200 million rupees. I'm just wondering whether people involved in research have been able to use that 200 million rupees. And not only 200 million rupees, I think we have to, if we want really to make Mauritius a little sort of South Korea or Singapore, we have to spend more on research. But also, a very important point, Madam Speaker, which I want to drive, is we need a collaboration from the private sector. And this is where I would suggest that we have to impose a levy on the big banks, on the big hotels, to drive that money, put that money for research. And last point, Madam Speaker, Unfortunately, the treatment which is meted to academics and researchers is shameful. And I will take the initiative, and I hope that the Minister of Education and the Minister of Higher Education will do the same, because the salary of a researcher at the University of Mauritius, and even at MRIC for the time being, you will be shocked. The salary of a starting lecturer or a starting researcher at the University of Mauritius and other universities is only 33,000 rupees or 36,000 rupees, ending with a sum of 60,000 rupees. So if we mean business, and this is where I agree with my colleague, Honorable Parapen, we have to chip in money, we have to do the necessary efforts, because a bill, this is a sort of exemplary bill. This is why I strongly commend it, but at the same time, we have to make things happen. And for things to happen, we need to work in collaboration, the private sector, the public sector, civil servants, researchers, everybody. This is where we will make Mauritius progress, and this is where there would be a real paradigm shift. On that, Madam Speaker, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Yes, Honourable Minister Ramtual.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the National Research and Innovation Institute Bill 2026. I'd like to begin by congratulating my colleague Minister for coming up with this initiative and this bill. It was really high time for the ecosystem for innovation to be reviewed in this country. It's good we go back. I think we went back to 1945 earlier. I'd like to take you a few years a little later than 1945. That was 1969 in the US, with the establishment of what we called as ARPANET. That was the seed of the internet. On the 29th of October 1969, the first electronic message was exchanged between Stanford Research Institute and the University of California, Los Angeles. In 1973, they managed to connect that small network with the Department of Defense in the UK. That was the first transatlantic electronic connection. But that connection was driven by British universities. And it's good we remember, we recall, and we respect the role that universities have played in the development of all technologies, and I will focus on internet technologies. There are moments in life, Madam Speaker, of a nation when legislation is not merely administrative. It is directional. Moments when a bill does not simply organize institutions, it redefines ambition. And today, this House is called upon to consider one such moment. Because what we are debating is not only the establishment of a new institution, it is the deliberate construction of the intellectual engine that will power Mauritius into its next economic era. For far too long, Madam Speaker, research in this country has existed in fragments and silos. Ideas were produced, reports were written, consultations were held, but too often, again, impact remained elusive. We had knowledge, but not always direction. We had ambition, but not always coordination. Our youth in this country, they deserve better than what we are able to provide to them at the moment. Not a single groundbreaking research that we have seen emanating from Mauritius that make a global impact. Not a single unicorn that has come out of this country. And my colleague, Honorable Babulal, was talking about changing the way we are doing things. He's absolutely right, and this is what we are trying to do. And I'd refer you to the famous definition of what Einstein called as insanity. We keep on doing the same things over and over again while expecting the results to be different. In the current model, the results will not be different. This is why it's time for change. And this is precisely what my colleague Minister is trying to do. And this bill corrects that issue. It establishes a national centralized body for research. And many countries have followed this example. China, which is leading research globally today, has that very model for research. And this is designed to align efforts to eliminate duplication, to make more judicious use of public funds, and to ensure that knowledge translates into policy and economic value. It institutionalizes evidence-based policy making, ensuring that decisions are grounded not in guesswork, but in data, analysis, and foresight. I'm sad that the leader of the opposition is not here. I would have loved for him to listen to me here. This is not a cosmetic reform.
Maybe he's listening.
Probably he is. I hope he is. This is not a cosmetic reform. This is structural. We heard about the political lens which the leader of the opposition used to look at this bill. He mentioned the powers of the minister with regards to directions of the research. And I'd refer here to the MDPA bill of 2023. And in that bill, there was this section with regards to employment of officers in the MDPA back then. And those are the changes that were made by the MSM government, of which the current leader of opposition was an active member. And that read, Section 16, powers of the minister in the MDPA bill and act. The minister may give such written directions of general nature to the agency. So MDPA is Mauritius Digital Promotion Agency. And I'll repeat, the minister may give such written directions of a general nature to the agency, not inconsistent with the act, as he considers necessary in public interest, and the agency shall comply with these directions. Madam Speaker, and the very same person today is challenging the powers that are being given to the minister with regards to the operation and the directions of this institute that is being established. And in the current bill, with regards to the employment of staff in this new institution, the minister has no power. The power is delegated to the board. And this is proper governance. The board would actually decide with regards to the employment of people. And he might also have missed another element with regards to the role that universities would be playing. He presented a hypothetical situation whereby people would actually overlook universities, they ignore universities to go and do the research themselves. But Section 4.1 subsection G actually makes provision for universities to be fully involved in the research work that will be carried out by this new institution. And Madam Speaker, allow me to place this bill in its true context now. Because this legislation is not an isolated initiative, it is a cornerstone of a much larger transformation. Our projected transition for a digital state, from a digital state to an intelligent state. And under clause 4, the institute is mandated not only to promote innovation, but to conduct mission-oriented research, addressing digital transformation and national challenges. If all the people working in government and all our institutions start operating in a mission mode, Madam Speaker, the results will be palpable. It will not just be continuous, but measured and continual improvement that we will achieve. And in fact, this is where my ministry steps in, not as a spectator, but as a catalyst of the change for the research and innovation that is being aimed at by this institution. And this is guided by our national AI strategy and the FAIR guidelines, FAIR standing for Fairness, Accountability, Inclusiveness, and Responsibility, that was launched on April 9th this year. And through this AI strategy, we will ensure that AI is not just imported blindly, but augmented locally and also developed through applied research programs. Government data is actually not underutilized, but it becomes the foundation of AI models that are actually built in Mauritius, obviously within the data protection norms. Public services are not digitized in isolation, but augmented with AI and integrated end to end. The AI unit established within my ministry is very purposeful with regards to the research that will be carried out in the institution. And those areas will touch upon healthcare challenges. Once the e-health system constructs the electronic medical records, based on research, we'll be able to implement the bracelets for patients who demand immediate care. And that takes research. For food security, climate resilience, digital transformation, and social inequality. AI-trained models on Mauritian data developed by Mauritian researchers is what we are aiming at. And this will be our sovereignty in the age of AI. This bill goes even further. Under Clause 12, the Institute will bridge the gap between academia and industry. And this aligns directly with what we are aiming at implementing. The Innovation Lab under the AI unit and the National AI Marketplace that we have established under the Ministry. And we will work with the Institute to complete the ecosystem for research and innovation in AI. This institute actually aims at coordinating with universities, reducing duplication and accelerating collaboration. Therefore, this speaks to our AI strategy, which is built on the 4 Ps: public, people, private, partnership. Because innovation does not happen in silos, it takes ecosystems. And behind every clause of this bill, there is a human story. Under Clause 6, this institute is mandated to identify and develop new economic sectors, including the digital economy and advanced technologies. Honorable Narsingan mentioned that a lot of research work is done in Mauritius. However, a lot of those research work remain in drawers. And I would strongly call for a central repository for all those research work to be published so that people can actually leverage those research ideas and try the commercial viability of same. And this is where Mauritius has a historic opportunity as well. The bill is about the young Mauritian who does not want to leave the country, but to build here. It is about the startup founder who has ideas, but he needs to rely on an ecosystem. It is about the student who dreams not just of using technology, but of creating it. It is about the farmer who can benefit from predictive analysis, the patient who can benefit from the AI-assisted diagnostics, the citizen who deserves smarter, faster, and more responsive public services. Honorable Ministers, it is also about the fisherman who takes risks and navigates to actually bring back his food that is he's going to put on the market. He should be able to navigate safely, but surely to pre-identified fishing grounds. These are the kinds of research that needs to take place, and this institution guarantees this. Through AI, through data, through innovation, we can position Mauritius as a regional leader for AI services. We can export digital solutions, not just consume them. We can create high-value jobs for our youth, and our AI strategy points into that direction. And we must also recognize where we are coming from. There was a time when digital transformation was spoken about, but not fully executed. When innovation was announced, but not always delivered. When structures existed, but ecosystems did not. Let me put it this way, because I believe in being fair, but also in being honest. The previous government sometimes treated innovation as an event. We are treating it as a system. They focused on visibility, we focus on viability. They focused on short-term announcements, but we focus on long-term architecture and economic reconstruction, which is sustainable. And history, Madam Speaker, does not judge intentions. It judges outcomes. We are not planting a seed today and expecting a tree by next week. Research, innovation, and the building of knowledge economy require time, consistency, and patience. I have gone through that cycle, and I know what it takes. But what we are doing right here, right now, is far more important. We are laying solid foundations. Foundations upon which future industries will emerge, new jobs will be created, and a new generation of Mauritians will thrive. Those who only look for immediate results may miss the significance of this moment. But those who understand nation building will recognize this for what it is, an investment in future stability, competitiveness, sovereignty of Mauritius. Madam Speaker, this bill ensures that Mauritius no longer operates in fragments. The world is entering an era where AI is programmable. Data is strategic and innovation determines competitiveness. And Mauritius has made its choice. We will create, we will innovate, we will lead, but responsibly, intelligently, and inclusively. This is not just a bill for today, it is a framework for the next generation. A generation that will not ask what Mauritius adopted, but what Mauritius created. Let us give them that foundation and move from ambition to impact. Madam Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
Thank you. Perfect timing for us to break for dinner. 1 hour.